Tensions between the U.S. and Canada reached a boiling point earlier this month when President Donald Trump dropped a bombshell: massive new tariffs on Canadian imports. His reasoning? Concerns over illegal immigration and the worsening fentanyl crisis sweeping through American communities. Under the new policy, all Canadian goods would be slapped with a hefty 25% tariff, while energy products would see a slightly lower but still painful 10% tax. The tariffs were set to take effect on February 4th, 2025, sending shockwaves through both nations. Canada wasn't about to take this lying down. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau fired back with tariffs of his own, a 25% tax on $30 billion worth of American goods. The list was brutal: beer, bourbon, fruit juices, clothing, sports equipment, household appliances, everyday items that Americans love. But Trudeau wasn't finished. He made it clear that after a public review, the tariffs could expand to hit an additional $125 billion in U.S. products. With both sides digging in, the situation seemed destined to spiral out of control. Then, just when it looked like an all-out trade war was inevitable, the unexpected happened: a breakthrough. After intense, behind-the-scenes negotiations, Trump and Trudeau struck a deal. The tariffs would be put on hold for 30 days. In exchange, Canada agreed to ramp up its border security efforts, appointing a fentanyl czar and forming a joint task force with U.S. officials to crack down on drug smuggling. But was this really a resolution, or just a temporary ceasefire? Within Canada, reactions were mixed. Some saw the deal as a smart, strategic pause to avoid economic disaster. Others feared it was just delaying the inevitable. Economists sounded the alarm. If these tariffs were eventually enforced, consumers on both sides of the border would feel the pinch. Higher prices, disrupted supply chains, and a strained trade relationship between two historically close allies. The uncertainty sent Canada scrambling for alternatives. Alberta, the heart of Canada's oil and natural gas industry, wasted no time in exploring new trade opportunities, particularly in Asia. The message was clear: Canada couldn't afford to put all its eggs in one basket, especially when that basket was becoming increasingly unpredictable. So what happens next? Will cooler heads prevail, or are we just 30 days away from a full-scale trade war? Only time will tell. For decades, Canada has leaned heavily on the United States as its primary buyer of oil and natural gas. Alberta, the country's energy powerhouse, has fueled this trade relationship, supplying billions of dollars worth of fuel each year. In 2022 alone, Canada exported a staggering $22.4 billion in natural gas to the U.S., cementing just how deeply intertwined their energy markets have become. But that deep connection now feels more like a vulnerability than a strength. Recently, the U.S. signaled the possibility of slapping new tariffs on Canadian energy products, a move that sent shockwaves through Canada's energy sector. Higher taxes on oil and gas exports would squeeze Canadian producers and force them to rethink their strategy. With tensions rising, Canada has begun looking elsewhere for buyers, and one name keeps coming up: Japan. Japan's growing energy needs have made it an attractive alternative market for Canadian exports. Sensing the urgency of the moment, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took action. He called for an emergency economic summit, gathering top business leaders, policy experts, and labor unions to chart a path forward. The goal? To reduce Canada's dependence on U.S. trade and explore new energy partnerships abroad. One of the key strategies discussed was revitalizing previously scrapped energy projects that could make it easier for Canada to ship oil and gas directly to international buyers rather than funneling everything through the U.S. Trudeau also pushed for strengthening internal trade within Canada itself, ensuring the country wasn't overly reliant on a single foreign market ever again. As the trade dispute unfolded, something remarkable happened. Public sentiment in Canada took a dramatic turn. Recent polling showed that a staggering 90% of Canadians now support reducing economic reliance on the U.S., a massive spike from before the tariff threat surfaced. Canadian companies also started adapting to the changing landscape. Take Suncor Energy, for example, one of Canada's largest oil producers. While many of its competitors rely almost entirely on selling oil to the U.S., Suncor reassured investors that it was in a better position to weather the storm. Why? Because it had access to the Trans Mountain Pipeline, a crucial lifeline that connects Canada's oil fields to the British Columbia coast. Coast. This pipeline allows Suncor to bypass the U.S. and ship oil directly to global markets, something many other Canadian energy firms can't do. Even with these efforts, Canada's deep economic ties to the U.S. won't be easy to untangle. America has long been Canada's biggest customer when it comes to energy, shaping policies, strategies, and trade decisions for years. But now, with the looming threat of tariffs, Canada is being forced to rethink its entire economic future. Which brings us to a big question. Is the U.S. being too tough on Canada? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Canada should push harder to find new trade partners? Or is this dispute just part of the usual back and forth between allies? Canada's big energy move, a game changer for global markets. The Asia-Pacific region's hunger for energy is growing fast, and Japan, one of the world's top buyers of liquefied natural gas, LNG, is scrambling to secure stable suppliers. In 2023 alone, Japan imported a staggering 66 million tons of LNG, trailing only behind China. While Japan is gradually shifting toward nuclear and renewable energy, its demand for power is set to soar, fueled by the rapid expansion of data centers and other energy-intensive industries. That's where Canada comes in. For Japan, sourcing LNG from Canada makes perfect sense. A shipment from Vancouver to Tokyo takes just 11 days, a sharp contrast to US LNG, which often gets bogged down in the costly and time-consuming journey through the Panama Canal. But that's not the only reason Canada is looking more attractive. Canada's LNG has a massive environmental edge, 40% less carbon-intensive than US LNG. In a world increasingly focused on lowering emissions, this makes Canadian gas a gold mine for countries aiming to balance energy security with sustainability. Recognizing this opportunity, Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, has been on a mission to deepen Canada's energy ties with Japan. During a recent trip to Tokyo, Schultz met with some of Japan's biggest energy players, including JERA, the country's largest LNG buyer. Touring the Futsu Thermal Power Station and LNG intake facility, she laid out Alberta's vision, a long-term energy partnership that would help secure Japan's future gas supply. She also sat down with leaders from the Japan Gas Association and executives from JOGMEC, Japan Oil, Gas, and Metals National Corporation, the group responsible for ensuring Japan's energy security. These meetings weren't just for show, they were about real investment opportunities in Alberta's rapidly expanding LNG sector. At the heart of this collaboration, LNG Canada. LNG Canada, a massive export terminal under construction in Kitimat, British Columbia, is the biggest energy investment in Canadian history. Backed by industry giants like Shell, Petronas, PetroChina, Mitsubishi, and Kogas, this $40 billion project is set to revolutionize Canada's role in the global energy market. Here's what makes it a game changer. Once operational in mid-2025, it will produce 14 million tons of LNG per year, with expansion plans to double that output in a second phase. Mitsubishi holds a 15% stake, proving how vital this project is to Japan's energy strategy. British Columbia, the chosen hub, has all the right ingredients: a deep water port that stays ice-free year-round, existing infrastructure, and an industrial-friendly environment. With over 95% of Phase 1 already completed, everything is on track for Canada to launch its first-ever LNG export shipment by mid-2025. But that's not all. While LNG Canada is grabbing global headlines, another project is making waves: the wood fiber LNG facility in Squamish, British Columbia. Unlike traditional LNG plants, this one is setting a new standard for sustainability. Built on the site of an old pulp mill, it will run on electric power instead of fossil fuels, drastically reducing emissions. Even more impressively, the project is a collaboration with the Squamish Nation, ensuring that cultural and environmental concerns are addressed from the ground up. By working closely with Indigenous partners, wood fiber LNG has gained strong community support, making it a model for responsible energy development. Canada is at a crossroads. The U.S. has long been its biggest energy customer, but as trade tensions rise and tariffs loom, Canada is making a bold move to diversify its markets, with Asia, and especially Japan, at the top of the list. If everything goes according to plan, Canada will no longer just be an energy supplier to the U.S. It will be a global powerhouse. A groundbreaking energy project is taking shape in Kitimat, British Columbia, but this one is unlike any before it. Cedar LNG, an indigenous-led initiative spearheaded by the Haisla Nation, is making history by combining economic opportunity with environmental responsibility. Partnering with private sector investors, the project aims to export 3 million tons of LNG annually, providing long-term benefits for the local community. What sets Cedar LNG apart is its commitment to sustainability. By integrating low-emission technologies and electrification, it is designed to minimize its carbon footprint, making it one of the greenest LNG facilities in the world. Positioned near existing energy infrastructure, the project is expected to operate efficiently, with its first shipments targeted for late 2028. One of the biggest advantages of Canadian LNG projects like Cedar LNG is their strategic location. Situated on Canada's west coast, these facilities offer a significantly shorter shipping route to Asia, particularly Japan, compared to U.S. Gulf Coast exporters who must navigate the long and costly Panama Canal. This reduces transportation costs and delivery times, making Canada a more competitive and reliable supplier in the global energy market. Beyond energy, Canada and Japan share a well-established trade relationship that continues to thrive. In 2023, Japan ranked as Canada's fourth-largest trading partner, with bilateral trade reaching 36.5 billion Canadian dollars. Canada's exports to Japan totaled 15.8 billion Canadian dollars, while imports from Japan stood at 20.7 billion Canadian dollars. This partnership has been strengthened by trade agreements such as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, which has helped eliminate trade barriers and expand market access between the two nations. The trade relationship between Canada and Japan is a carefully balanced exchange, where each country leverages its strengths. Canada provides crucial natural resources, including LNG, coal, propane, minerals like copper and nickel, agricultural goods, pharmaceuticals, and forest products, all of which fuel Japan's industries. In return, Japan supplies Canada with high-tech machinery, automobiles, medical devices, and advanced industrial equipment. Companies like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan not only export cars to Canada, but also manufacture them within its borders, strengthening economic ties further. Additionally, Japanese scientific instruments and cutting-edge technology support Canada's hospitals, factories, and research institutions. For over a century, Canada and Japan have built a strong, mutually beneficial relationship with energy and trade at its core. Now, with Canada's LNG sector rapidly expanding and Japan's energy needs growing, both countries are positioned to deepen their economic ties even further. As Canada works to diversify its exports and reduce reliance on the U.S., Japan emerges as a key energy partner, securing long-term access to clean, stable energy. This transformation could redefine Canada's global economic role, making it a major player in the international energy market. The question now is, can Canada fully capitalize on this opportunity and cement its place as a global energy powerhouse? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. In the early 1900s, Canada and Japan recognized the potential for trade, exchanging timber, fish, and manufactured goods. As economic ties grew, so did cultural connections, with Japanese immigrants arriving in Canada, bringing their traditions, skills, and resilience. However, their journey was far from easy. Many faced widespread discrimination and struggled to integrate into Canadian society. Then came World War II, a turning point that shattered relations between the two nations. As allies of opposing sides, Canada and Japan became enemies, and the consequences were devastating. One of the darkest chapters in Canadian history was the internment of Japanese Canadians. Thousands were forcibly removed from their homes, stripped of their property, and detained under the guise of national security. Families were torn apart, businesses were lost, and the scars of this injustice lingered for generations. After the war, both countries faced a long road to reconciliation. In Canada, the government formally acknowledged its mistreatment of Japanese Canadians, issuing official apologies and launching compensation programs in the late 1980s. Meanwhile, Japan, rising from the devastation of war, focused on rebuilding its economy and transforming into a modern democracy, paving the way for renewed international partnerships, including with Canada. Over the decades, this relationship evolved into one of economic cooperation and mutual benefit. Japan's Japan's rapid industrial and technological expansion after World War II created new opportunities for Canada, particularly in natural resource exports. As Japan's industries boomed, Canada became a key supplier of energy, minerals, and agricultural products, while Japan emerged as a leading exporter of automobiles, machinery, and cutting-edge technology to Canada. Today, this once fractured relationship has transformed into a strong and strategic partnership, built on trade, innovation, and shared global interests. But history has shown that economic ties are only part of the story. True partnership requires trust, respect, and the ability to move forward while never forgetting the past. If you found this journey through history interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into global connections.